Back live tonight here on In Focus. Higher education students in Pretoria and Durban took to the streets today over the new NSFAS payment system. Beneficiaries want the system scrapped, saying allowances are not only delayed, but that it comes with exorbitant banking charges. For more on this conversation, back again with us tonight, NSFAS spokesperson Slumezi Skosana. Skosana, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time tonight. The TET students saying even today, like the system was offline and no payments were being done, and honestly they are calling for a reverting to the old system that was there. Is that even a possibility?
Well, at this stage of the game, it is not a possibility. We took a management decision to implement a direct payment system, and that is what we are doing right now. Yeah. And I just have to indicate that it is working, even though there may be glitches reported, but obviously those are being dealt with.
So what was the thinking? Because they're saying that previously you could be able to deposit money directly into the student's bank account without the in-between, the third-party presence.
Thabo, the scheme has grown from just providing funding to 7,700 beneficiaries with a budget of 440 million. Today we're talking about a student population that we are financing to the tune of 1.1 million with a budget of 47 billion. So we needed a solution that could, address the growing number of beneficiaries that are that continue to get higher education with the assistance of NSFAS. So it is for that reason that we procured a solution that would ensure that the students get their money in a secure, safe, and timely manner.
Yeah. So there was no way to do it without the fintech companies. They were, how was NSFAS doing it up until that point?
Well, previously what NSFAS had done is to give the money to the institution. That is your college or your university. And then it will then be incumbent upon the university to disperse the money according to the various cost centers.
I see.
For example, for tuition, the university will obviously keep the money for itself. And for accommodation, if it owns the accommodation, it will keep the money for itself. But if the accommodation is off-site, the university, or off-campus rather, the university will accredit and maybe grade that particular private accommodation and make the necessary lease agreements with them and then pay them. And then the last part of the whole funding solution would then be the allowance to the student. And the money would go directly to the student from the university. But obviously the university would also deploy a solution of sort. So now what that created in the past, Thabo, was that from an accountability point of view, we were a little distant, from the action. Just like the old, I guess it's now overused, the fact that some student received 40 million in their account, and it was money from NSFAS where it originated. But NSFAS, when things went wrong, was too far from the action, because when NSFAS was asked about the money, they said we gave it to the university. When the university was asked, the university had given it to the service provider. When the service provider was asked, the service provider said, let me investigate, something must have gone wrong. But at that point, some 14 million rands was in someone else's account erroneously, and it had been used up to 800,000 in a short period of 73 days. So that put us in an awkward position as NSFAS from an accountability point of view. So in addressing something similar to something like that, and all other possibilities, such as what you may have picked up in other fields, such as your ghost teachers, ghost learners, ghost pensioners and so on, we decided that we should deal directly with a student one-on-one, that once the registration data from the institution has been received, then the money must be given to the student, so that if there's a glitch or there's a problem, the student can come straight to us, just like you would have a problem, let's say, with your deduction or a transaction that has run through your bank account. You don't go to the social media, to trumpet that transaction as something that has gone wrong and whatnot. You go to the institution and say, how do you explain this fee or that charge in my account? So that is what we're trying to do, Thabo.
Yeah. So how are you going to address these two things? One, delays in students accessing their funds, and two, the slew of fees that they say they are charged in order for them to access their money. Because I think if you can address those two things, the students, by and large, are not going to have any issues with this new accounting system. Look,
Thabo, let me deal with the first one, which is delayed payments. When we introduced the subject, rather the initiative to do this, sorry, I'm under load shedding, so I hear some sound coming from some quarters. It was that we're trying to address the issue of consistency and timeliness in the receipt of these allowances by students. But when the scheme was introduced, there was some SRCs on campuses that ill-advised, their constituencies that they should not embark on this, they should not onboard. As the result of them not onboarding, they could not receive their allowances on time. But then we met with student leaders early also in July. And once we had threshed out, a lot of things. One of them was around, was an agreement around students onboarding. And as soon as they onboarded, we started paying. And we even did something extraordinary by running 2 payments in 1 month instead of the usual 1 month payment run, where on the 14th of July, we paid those that had onboarded from the beginning of July up to the 13th. And then we also, as per agreement, to do this, went on to say that at the end of July we will be able to pay if you come on board. Fortunately, the students all over the country onboarded. There were obviously certain campuses that continued to intimidate and our officials that had been deployed to assist the students with the onboarding. But as I'm talking to you, 3 days ago, we managed to pay allowances of over 400,000 students. Pay almost to the tune of R1 billion on the 31st. And those allowances were dispersed successfully through these systems. Yes, we have heard that there are glitches where others saw lower balances and so on. But we are saying the door is not closed. We're not slamming the door on anybody saying, look, I was expecting 1,650 and I know that maybe 12 rand would have gone off my account due to the fact that that's the management fee. But come forward and show us that, yes, there is that little problem, and then we can address it. But that is in no way reflective of the weaknesses of the whole initiative to achieve what it must achieve.
Yeah. So you're saying that the reported delays, yes, barring the glitches that could have happened at least from the 31st, but you're saying that a bulk of the reported delays are because of students who have not onboarded.
Exactly. Students that have not onboarded, how do you pay through the system when that person is not in the system? But as soon as that person is in the system, you can pay, and then you can talk about other things such as those glitches which have been reported. I don't want to sound cynical and say that they are being blown out of proportion, but I'm inviting those that have had experiences that are antithetical to what we are expecting to come forward and say, look, I transacted as follows, and this is what I'm getting. can somebody resolve the issue for me? Then we will be more than willing to do that.
Let's take the second bit. I mean, I even spoke to Izaga about this question of the fees that are in excess. They agreed that, yes, the initial agreement is that 8 rands will be deducted, but they're saying there seems to be a misunderstanding on the parts of the students where they do third-party transactions and internet transactions and so on and so forth, and how those particularly carry other fees outside of the bank charges that were agreed upon. What is the misunderstanding there? Where did the line break in communication?
Yeah, you see, Thabo, I think it is very important to also educate and inform each other that, services must be paid for, whichever way you look at it. But perhaps the reasonableness of the fees and so on should conform, to market conditions or to sector protocols, So when it comes to the management of this account, you've got 12 rand. That is for the monthly fee for the money that comes in. The rest of the other fees or charges and so on are surely based on what you may call financial emancipation, where the student or the user of the account has got the latitude to use the account whichever way he thinks efficient or affordable. For example, you may choose to withdraw the money, at which point you would be charged a different fee as opposed to swiping or as opposed to withdrawing from a retailer and so on. Just like any other use of a bank card, you would look at the most efficient or cost-effective way of transacting. And I mean, that is part of financial literacy that we would like to also inculcate in our young people. And the benefit of the solution that we've got is that while if you're using your traditional banking system, you would have the data on the usage and of the funds sitting somewhere where it's inaccessible to the provider of the funds. In this case, the data is accessible to us, so that if we gave the student an allowance, we have a sense of how that money is utilized. And also, the cost drivers will determine how cost effectively the student uses the money.
Let's talk to the issue of the defunding, right? The student body I was speaking to at least yesterday, even the Democratic Alliance Shadow Minister of Education have this view that NSFAS took a unilateral decision alongside the SIU to investigate these students and discovered whatever they discovered and came back and said 40,000 of you will now be defunded. And a process was never designed where students could come in and make submissions to say, okay, we see that you now have a bank account that is getting so much amount of money. These are your parents, or are they still married or whatnot? Others, they're saying, both parents actually even died, but the SIU says both my parents are still alive and they are above the threshold of 350,000. They say there was no space that was created for them to come in and make those kinds of submissions.
There is space, currently to mitigate that. And unfortunately, Thabo, when it comes to issues of fraud and mischief or transgression, the luxury of consensus seeking is sometimes, never there. Once the transgression or the fraud is discovered, it has to be dealt with there and then. And then it would be incumbent upon the aggrieved parties, to step up to the plate and say, look, I may have claimed that I'm an orphan and in fact I'm not, or indeed my parents are pensioners or are SASSA grantees and I am not working, but the system is showing that my parents are actually working and earning over 350. The door is not closed on people making those representations. But once the fraud is discovered, it's actually a crime, so it has to be dealt with there and then.
So at this point, there are some, I believe, who have been reversed back and now are refunded. How many of those? And what were the reasons why they've now been refunded?
No, at this stage of the game, I am not aware of people that have come forward to say, look, I've been erroneously defunded, and I am now presenting documentation to the effect that I am deserving, and therefore reinstate me. We would welcome, such. But I know that for the calls that I have received personally, it is of people that says, look, I just went over the mark of 350 because my salary has increased. What are the chances of you just keeping, the whole thing going, because it happened mid-year when everybody else had planned, for the academic costs and so on. I mean, then at that point, you look at what the policy says. If the policy says the threshold is 350, you apply it arbitrarily, because if you are to listen to each and every story from everybody that applies, then you would not be able to apply the policy. It's unfortunate that, for example, it's fortunate to the extent that somebody's salary has increased. Unfortunately, that it again maybe puts that person in what we have come to call the missing middle. Whose address we are still working on.
Yeah, I wanted to come there to say, but is this not inadvertently increasing your problem of the missing middle, where you are delaying again in coming up with a solution?
Well, the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Blake Zimande, is working very hard in accelerating, the approval of the integrated and sustainable student funding model. That is being migrated through the proper channels in Cabinet. I may not be the appropriate person to talk about that, but I am aware that it is a burning issue, and it comes up every time. When people apply, and there's a window period for people to apply, where they say, but look, I've got I know I'm a professional or a police or a nurse, but I cannot afford to. I can pay for my daughter or my son the first year, but the second year, I'm just not able to pay that 120,000 rand. Or I've got now another kid joining the first one at varsity. It's really not affordable. But unfortunately, then the government has come up with this. No, let me just say, fortunately, the government has come up with this policy position that says, while we cannot provide free education for everyone, let us provide free education for the working class for now, which is what I think is plausible and commendable on the part of government. Because you will know and remember, Thabo, that the education and training sector is a very, very huge sector. Actually, worldwide is estimated at $4 trillion. I'm talking about here a sector that sells knowledge here. It's not a cheap thing. And I know, that from the government side, it's not something that the government would love to leave to chance. So I think we have to commend, the government through NSFAS in providing funding for these students, because in our time, it was actually part bursary, part loan. We had to pay back the money. But this time around, the students that are getting the funding, they are getting it with no expectation of paying it back. The only condition that we are putting is that after they have graduated, they must only stay in South Africa. They must stay and work in South Africa for as long as they have been funded, with no obligation to say that once you reach a particular threshold of annual income, pay 5% or 10% of this per month. So I think for me, it is free education in the true sense of the word, albeit targeting a particular segment of the population.
Slumezi Skosana, appreciate your time. Thanks so much, as always, for coming on tonight. National Student Financial Aid Scheme spokesperson there.